All right, we're going to start off talking about a new program approach. So what that means is in the past, we have had just using checking activation as our as a use case. We have had one campaign to cover that use case typically. What we wanted to do is take a step back and look at the whole picture for success. And really, what that means is it's not simply about one campaign, it's about multiple campaigns that create a program. And some of the things that we have talked about is what action or actions do you want contacts to take when they do not meet the objectives, when they do or do not meet the objectives that you're trying to get them to meet or take. And if objectives are not being met by the end, let's ask the consumers why they're not being taken. These things are so important. It's not a program is really looking at, again, those multiple campaigns that create a full um, uh, picture for success. When we look at how we're helping to get those results, we are creating those program flows for you for key use cases and creating the campaign templates that match those flows. So I'm going to just jump into an example of this using our deposit account onboarding program and looking at the first 90 days. So if we look at this program flow, it's made up of multiple campaigns. It cannot just be one campaign. We understand this as marketers. We understand this from almost everything we do in life. You ask once, it's potentially that action is not going to be taken that first time. So let's make sure we have actions to take on ours by us to ensure that your consumers, your members, your customers are taking those actions. So this is looking at the first 90 days of onboarding a net new customer or member. In the past, we started with that first green circle over to the far left, the first 30 days of checking activation. We're using 7 to 10 messages to get that user, that contact back to that guide. And then if they completed all of those objectives within that campaign that you guys are probably very used to, I don't think there's a single customer not using our onboarding campaign, then we would take them to a thank you message and a survey to ask how we did. But if they did not take the actions, meet the objectives in that first campaign, let's retarget them with very similar messages, just tweaked slightly, and then do another 7 to 10 messages to get them to the guide to have them finish setting up their account. Now, our system is savvy enough to understand the objectives that could have potentially been met in the first campaign, but not in the second campaign, and we can hide those for you. So your targeting can actually stay exactly the same if you wanted to. And again, we can hide those objectives based off of that. So when I say retargeting, I'm not talking about anything fancy. I'm not even talking about our interaction retargeting. I'm simply saying that if they do not meet the objectives within that first campaign, let's set up a second campaign in order to do that. Now, if they do complete all the objectives in that second campaign, great. We'll send them to that thank you message with a survey on how we did. But if they don't, we're going to get a little bit more tactical in the last 30 days of the program. We're going to look at those things that really help drive profitability and primacy, which is digital banking, direct deposit, and getting that debit card to be used as top of wallet. We're going to split those out into 3 different campaigns and really take them through an educational journey on why to use these services, these products, and just take it to a little bit of a deeper level. So for direct deposit, for example, we have 2 ways in our system that you can do this. We have this on one page right now within the journey, but let's break that down. Let's really educate them. What we sent them in the first 2 campaigns didn't work, so let's educate them even more and be more clear about the benefits and have a full campaign related to just that. The same thing with card on file. If for some reason they still are not taking the actions and those objectives are not being met, let's ask them why. Now, I have talked to a lot of customers, and thank you for that. Thank you for your time, and you have been heard. When we look at the tools that we use to enable an outcome, like our direct deposit widget or our card on file widget, it's those are, we try to be as friction free as possible, right? But there is some steps that the contact has to take. Now, it could be that the tool is not understood. It could be that the tool is complicated. It could be that they don't feel secure to enter in their new debit card. All of those reasons are completely legit and completely possible. Let's ask those questions. But at the same time, we live in a very competitive landscape. So it could be that they do not want to put their debit card at top of file because they are using a different vendor that offers points. That could be a credit card, that could be a debit card from another financial institution. Let's figure out if that is part of it. If you're not, if you don't have a rewards program, if you're not offering some type of reward, could that be the reason that they're not taking action? Direct deposit is the same thing. Direct deposit, if they could be have another account at another financial institution and they had direct deposit and they're offering 2 days early for wage access. Are you offering that? If you're not offering that, that might be the thing that is making them not switch over their direct deposit because they have this other account and they're getting access to their wages 2 days early. So the whole thing is looking at the full journey of the first 90 days and not just saying after the first 30 days we're done. It's saying after the first 30 days we're not done if they didn't take the action and that objective isn't being met. So let's make sure we're retargeting them. And again, let's make sure that we're asking why. If they're not taking the actions at the end of the journey, I think it will be incredibly beneficial, especially if there are competitive levers in there. And there could be other levers, don't get me wrong. It could be the other things that I mentioned at first, but let's really find out so we can reach out or enhance the product and services or the messages if you are offering that and it's not in those messages. So this is an example of a program flow. We also are looking at, as part of this, is creating all the campaigns that align with that program flow, as I mentioned. And we're doing a slight refresh on those templates, the campaign templates. We're looking at a hierarchy of messaging, looking at primary hooks and then secondary, and then looking at messaging underneath that to make sure that the hook that you want them to see and actually get them interested enough to read further is very clear and very prominent. We're using icons instead of a lot of text to make sure that the eye is going there and that the icon can say exactly what it is, even if they don't read that smaller text underneath. We're looking at calling out the clear benefits. Again, the competitive elements that we talked about, making sure that your benefits are clear. And we're going to show you those things that consumers may be looking at from the research that we did, like that early wage access or points for debit cards, and making sure that the action we want them to take is clear. On top of that, we know that some of the tools may be more complex for some versus others, so including videos to help guide them of this is what you're going to see when you click this button for like the direct deposit widget, for example. And then another thing that we looked at as well is that we are seeing some fall off. So contacts are going to the guide and then they're bouncing once they get there. They're not moving on to that next step. So we need to ensure that transactions and the transition and the transition direction is clear. So you can see at the bottom of the screen that large continue button down there. That will go to half the page for the next pages, but just ensuring that that transition is clear because this is a guide concept. It's not a landing page concept. We want them to go to that next step. So whatever we can do to get them to do that is incredibly important. Now, all of this is going to be where we are going to launch a beta program here shortly for this, and we are going to be looking at that program flow with this new template and doing some A/B testing against the old to ensure that what we have changed here is truly making a difference in engagement and the end result. There's one other thing that we're doing on the next slide, which I'll go through, is because we have this guide concept, in the past, we have looked at a single message for a single objective. So when we look at an objective, let's say that's a page. So direct deposit had a page within the guide. That's an objective. So it had one reminder to get them back to the guide to complete their direct deposit. But because we have this guide concept, we're unique. We don't need to have just one message per objective because of the rule of 7. And this was still in place when I was in marketing and marketing programs and marketing operations. I made sure to that this is still the research and the study, but it's the rule of 7, which means that a customer or member, potential customer or member, and a customer or member must see a message at least 7 times before they're provoked to take an action. So if we were just sending one email per objective, they're just seeing something once. We want to try something of the rule of 7 because we have this guide concept. We just want them to get back to the guide and complete their setup for this new account that they just opened, because that's what they really need to do. We want to keep that message somewhat consistent across these, using slightly different hooks to see what interests them. But the overall message is still the same. The overall action is still the same. Get them to the guide to complete their setup. So that rule of 7. So again, all of this, we've done research. We've looked at what is being done today, where we're seeing fall off, talking to different customers on what's working and what's not. So we will be doing A/B testing on this, and we're going to come and do a beta on it just to ensure that we're tweaking and enhancing as we go, to make sure we have the best program flow and the best campaign template.